You're listening to Crossroads Church with Pastors Marcus and Natalie Avalos. The following message was recorded live at our Sunday morning services. For more information, go to www.crossroadsc.com or visit us in one of our Sunday morning services at 8:30, 10, and 11:30. And now prepare your hearts as we receive this morning's message.
I'm super excited to be with you guys. We're going to be picking up our second part of our series on the book of Ecclesiastes, which happens to be my favorite of all of the books of the Bible. Last week we launched it talking about how you find meaning and recognizing that meaning is never found here on earth unless it's connected to an eternal purpose. You can try and find meaning, but most of us walk around trying as hard as we can, but until you find that eternal purpose, you never really understand the purpose for all of life. And so we end up waking up sometimes in the morning and going, we have to do this again. And when you start to feel that, it's a good sign that you've maybe lost connection with that eternal purpose. So if you want to go back and check that out on the Crossroads app, you can find that from last week. But this week we're going to talk about King Solomon from Ecclesiastes 2 and his pursuit of lots of different ways to find pleasure and what we can learn from him in that pursuit that he undertook. But I want to start with telling you guys a story. When I was in college, I worked for Southwest Airlines. And I worked at the airport in San Antonio. It was a great job. I loved working there. And I got, about a year in, I got transferred down to the downstairs, which is where I would handle baggage complaints. So upstairs, they have people that check you in for the flights, and those people, they're always looking on the computer, and like, what are they always doing on the computer? I ended up getting transferred downstairs to baggage service, where I handled lost baggage. Now, a lot of people that I worked with are like, oh, bummer, that's like a demotion getting put down there. But I came to love working in the baggage service office because, first of all, Southwest didn't lose a whole lot of bags. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And second of all, that time on my hands was really helpful because it was in college. So I was getting my undergrad done, and I had a lot of downtime. Sometimes I have an hour or two between flights to study. And I just quiet and I'd study. Now, obviously, if a bag got lost, people would come and, they'd complain to me. So a lot of my friends were like, dude, everybody that comes down there has a problem. And I was like, yeah, but I kind of like it. It gives me something I've got a chance to resolve the problem, resolve the challenges, whatever. It's pretty much basic problems. The bag's either lost or the bag's damaged. And it didn't take a lot of rocket science to fix it. So I would do it, take care of what needed to be done. And I came to love that job. But here's what I learned when I was working in the baggage department. People get really touchy about their stuff. You ever notice that? Some of you are like, yeah, I'm touchy about my stuff. And you're like, you ever had that where you lend something to that one person and it always comes back a little worse off than when you lent it to them? Yeah, I get touchy about my stuff when that happens too. But they get really touchy about their stuff, particularly about their bags. And all sorts of weird scenarios happened. We had all these heated exchanges with people, like really intense, sometimes fights. Because of stuff that happened to their stuff. So one example I remember is I got a call from the guy that was delivering the bags from the plane to the airport, and right before he put them on the conveyor, he called me. He's like, Joel, I need you to come out and take a look at this. I said, oh no, what's going on? So I walked outside before they put the bags on the conveyor, and he said, look, this bag, it tore open. It's this big old bag, and inside of it, we opened it up, and there were probably 700 bottles of shampoo that somebody had taken from the Venetian. Those little shampoo, hotel shampoos. Literally, the thing was loaded. It was way overweight. The bag was way over. I think she probably paid for overweight charges. The bag was so heavy. I thought, oh man, this is, I'm thinking, I don't think she stayed 700 nights. Like, how'd you get this much shampoo, right? Somebody raided the cart of the cleaning lady. But, so we got the bag all packed up, and we sent it off on the conveyor, and I called her, and I called her on the overhead. I said, hey, ma'am, can you come here? We want to talk to you. She shows up, and she sees the bag, and she's like, what the bleep, what? She gets all mad. She's like, there's really valuable stuff in there. I'm like, ma'am, I'm so sorry. We're going to take care of the bag. We'll replace the bag for you. And she's like, the contents of this bag are irreplaceable. And I'm like, ma'am, I know what's in there. I had to look. It was open. I was like, it's shampoo you jacked from the Venetian, right? I didn't say that, I was smiling and stuff. But she's so furious about this stuff she stole from the Venetian. I didn't say that. The stuff that was taken from the Venetian Hotel, right? So she she literally got more angry and more angry and finally had to call the police, and she ended up getting arrested, and it was just a mess. But people got so touchy about their stuff. But here's one of the weirdest things that I noticed that happened to me while I was working in baggage. And this happened quite regularly, but the first time it happened to me, I was like, this is so bizarre. So a flight came in, and everybody got their luggage, but one bag stayed on the conveyor belt, and it just kept going around and around and around and around. I'm like, 20 minutes later, is anybody going to claim that bag? Nobody had claimed it. So I went and I took the bag, and I brought it next to my baggage office, and I waited. And the whole day passed, my entire shift passed, and nobody claimed that big black bag. I thought, what in the world? So I went home that night, went to school the next morning, came back that evening, my shift, the bag is still there. So I talked to the morning agent. I said, what, nobody claimed the bag? No, nobody claimed the bag. I was like, what? So that afternoon, I got the name tag off it, and I called the guy. I said, hey, it's Joel from Southwest Airlines. We've got your bag here. And he's like, what bag? I was like, well, the bag you checked in that you left here. He's like, oh, yeah, that bag. The guy did not even remember he had checked in a bag. Now, this is weird to me. So I said, well, are you going to come and get it? And he's like, yeah, I'll come and get it. Days passed. He's never showed up. He never called to claim the bag. So I start. There's a rule at Southwest. We can only hold on to it for like 6 weeks at the airport, and then we have to ship it up to a warehouse. All airlines have this. They have a warehouse for bags that never get claimed. And what happens is, like, every 6 months to a year, they'll auction off all those bags by the ton. So there's actually a show about this where you can actually buy like a ton of unclaimed luggage. And there's some crazy good stuff in there. So, like, this guy, finally, he never claimed it. So I'm like, all right, I got to send it to Dallas after weeks and weeks. And one of the things you have to do is you have to open it and look what's inside and document what's inside. Before you send it off to Dallas, you have to get a witness. So the witness is there with me. She's looking through it. We're going through it. We're finding some clothes. And the girl's like, these are really nice, expensive clothes. And we found some electronics in there. And I'm thinking, what in the world? This guy must be so rich that he doesn't even realize, like, all these expensive clothes. He doesn't even feel the loss of it. And she's like, rich? Are you kidding? He's flying Southwest Airlines. Like, he's not rich. So I'm like, what? So we went through this whole thing. And there's these clothes. Some of them still have the tag on them from when he purchased them. We ended up shipping this bag off, and I just thought it was the weirdest thing. This would happen regularly. People would just forget this stuff. And what's crazy to me about it is everything in that bag, at some point, that guy had been maybe walking through a store and said, oh, I got to have that. Oh, I need that. And all that stuff ended up in that bag, and then he just completely forgot about it. Now, here's what I know about you. Everybody in this room, I'm guessing you've probably never left a bag that you forgot you even checked at the airport. I'm guessing. But I know that at your house, you've got this drawer. Or maybe it's like an entire closet. Or maybe it's a garage full of stuff that at one point in your life you said, I got to have that. Man, that pair of shoes, you're walking by and you're like, oh, those shoes, they just jumped out at me, right? I got to have those shoes, right? So you got to get those shoes. And they end up in the closet. And they promised at one point to make your life complete, right? But then what happens? They end up in the closet and you forget about it. This happened to me last week. I was cleaning out. I was doing a little spring cleaning. And I found this in a drawer. You know what this is? This is the iPod 3. And I remember when this came out, I thought, I have got to have this. I remember the lies I told myself, and that my head went like this. This thing will hold hundreds of songs, and I'm going to put all these songs on it. And man, I'm going to be so motivated. I'm going to go to the gym every day and work out to this music, and I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to get ripped thanks to this iPod. And I remember thinking, this iPod's it's going to change my life. I'm going to get in shape. And I remember going to the gym that first day and working out in the music. I'm like, yeah. But then the next day I was kind of sore. So I was like, well, we'll just put we'll go again later. And anyways, long and the short of it, several years later, the iPod I had to have that was going to change my life is now not changing my life. Anybody relate to that? You've got that drawer. You've got that closet. You got all that stuff in there that, man, you just, at one point, you had to have it. You were so excited. When you hit click on Amazon, you were just like, come on, it can't get here fast enough. Come on. And the FedEx guy drives by the house, and you're like, my brother said he started to get offended now when the FedEx guy drives through his neighborhood and doesn't drop anything off at his house because he's always ordering from Amazon. Anyway, you've got that, right? We've all got something like that. And here's the crazy thing about it. Even though we've got a drawer full of stuff, a closet full of stuff, a garage full of stuff, every one of us still has something right now, this morning, that in your mind, if you were to think about it long enough, you would start to think this, and you would bring it up. it would be in your head as this: if I can just get blank, I will have enough, or I'll be happy. So we have all this stuff, right? But we start to say to ourselves, man, you're single maybe, and you say, if I can just get married, I'll be happy, right? Some of you are married, and you say, if I can just get divorced, I'll be happy, right? Some of you say, man, if I can just get that job, that promotion, I'll be happy. Some of you are saying, if I can just get through school, I'll be happy. Man, if I can just get the kids out of the house, I'll finally have money and I'll be happy, right? And we all have this thing in our head. Every one of us has something in our mind right now that we're saying, if I can just get this one more thing, I'll be happy. But then what happens? We get the one more thing, and then it gets thrown into a drawer or forgotten about, right? So like the other day when I picked up this iPod out of the drawer, I didn't go, oh, snap, my life is complete. I forgot, right? That didn't happen when I found this iPod, which promised to make my life complete many years ago. So we end up in this constant drive, this thing within us that's saying, look, all you need is this one more thing and you'll be happy. Really, really, really. Once you get that motorcycle, once you get that new job, once you get that bigger house, once you get that car, once you get that new spouse, once you get that new boyfriend, I'll be happy if I can just get blank. But what happens? It never makes us happy. So where did this come from? Like, where did this drive within us that tells, we've all got it. And if you're saying here, I don't have that drive, you're lying, right? You're lying to yourself. We've all got this thing that says, if I can just get one more thing, and it may be another relationship, it may be more prestige, it may be another degree. If I can get it, I'll have enough. Where did it come from? I think it came in the beginning of time with Adam and Eve. The first lie that that Satan told Eve, Adam and Eve, they're in this perfect garden. Everything's great. Everything's fine. They have everything they need. God's provided for them. But what does Satan tell them? Satan basically comes and says, God is holding out on you, Eve. There's one more thing you need. You don't have everything. God says you have everything, but there's one more thing you need. And the thing you need is you need to understand the difference between good and evil. All Adam and Eve knew was good. He says, once you know the difference between good and evil, you'll have it, but God's holding out on you. So all you need is that one more thing. And you know what? We fell for it. And we've been falling for the same lie ever since. If I can just get that one more thing, it'll fill that emptiness within me, that hole, that void that I know is like, I try, I work hard, and I want to fill that, but we're pursuing this one thing after another, and it never does the job. We're in this series on Ecclesiastes. It was written by a guy named Solomon. And Solomon, he was the son of David. Remember David that killed Goliath? Solomon was his son, and Solomon had kind of a dream come true. He had, you ever, we all kind of have this dream of like somebody coming to us, maybe a genie in a bottle, and saying, hey, you get one wish, right? You know that if you ever do have that, you ever find yourself on a desert island with a genie and they say you get one wish, you know what you ask for, right? Money. No, not money. Unlimited wishes. Just a little insider tip there. You always ask for unlimited wishes, okay? So Solomon kind of had that happen. God himself actually shows up and says, I'm so pleased with your dad, David, that I'm going to give you anything you ask. So Solomon could have asked for anything. Could have asked for money, unlimited wishes. But instead he asked for wisdom. And wisdom is the right application of knowledge. It's not just knowing something, but knowing how to apply it to your life, right? And living skillfully with it. And God was so impressed with what Solomon asked for. The king, he said, man, I'm so impressed with you, Solomon. I'm not only going to give you wisdom, I'm going to give you riches. I'm going to subdue all your enemies. I'm going to give you everything you need. So Solomon, he lives this amazing life, the most wise man besides Jesus that ever walked the face of the earth. And he wrote 3 books of the Bible. We've talked about the first book, Proverbs, that we read that a few months ago. But now we're in the book of Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes is my favorite book of the Bible because it deals with the big existential questions, the big questions of our existence. Like, why am I here? What is the point of everything I'm doing? Does my life have meaning? Is there any significance to what I'm doing? Ecclesiastes addresses these questions, but he does it in a really unique way. In fact, it's such a unique way that growing up, a lady told me one time, she said, the book of Ecclesiastes was written by King Solomon when he was in a fallen state and backsliding and turning from God. She said, so you don't really pay attention to that book. And I remember as a kid thinking, well, then why'd they leave it in there? Like, if it's something that's going to turn us away from God, why would you put it in the Bible? So So I think that's the wrong way to look at Ecclesiastes, but I think you do have to look at Ecclesiastes from another lens, and we talked about that lens last week. In Ecclesiastes, there's this one key phrase that you're going to see today, too, that we looked at last week. It's the phrase, under the sun. Solomon, he had everything, and he says, but he still says, everything is meaningless under the sun. And I said, to translate under the sun, what you just got to think of is, on earth with what you see. That's the translation for under the sun. So he said, it's meaningless if you're not connected to an eternal purpose. You're striving for something that's never going to bring you fulfillment. So I'd encourage you, we actually, by the way, a little promotion, we're changing the Crossroads app. So if you've had the Crossroads app for the last few years, it's totally changing. We're getting a whole new app. So the app you have is not going to work soon. So I would encourage you, get on the Google Play Store or the App Store from Apple. Download the new Crossroads one. All you have to do is Google Crossroads TX. If after service, any of the staff members can help you find it. But you want to get that. And I want to encourage you to listen to last week's message because it's the framework for everything we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks that I'm going to be sharing. And the key is understanding that under the sun, what we see, what's on earth, it's never going to bring you fulfillment. It's never going to bring you meaning. It's never going to bring you purpose unless it's connected to something outside of earth, and that's eternal perspective, having a nature that's driven by eternity and what's ahead. So that's where we pick up in Ecclesiastes 2, we pick up King Solomon talking about this pursuit where he tried to pursue all these things. He said this, he said, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. So Solomon's guy, I got all the resources in the world. I'm going to figure out how to find the pleasure. Like which of these pleasureful things are going to bring me fulfillment? He said, but that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? He said, man, I felt all this pleasure, but it actually went away. Interesting side note. I didn't share this with any other service, so you're getting something special here. There's actually an interesting mental illness going around right now. It's called anhedonia. It's actually a physiological illness. Anhedonia is from hedonism. Hedon is the pleasure, word for pleasure in, I think it's Greek or Italian or Latin. Anhedonia is the inability to feel pleasure. And they're finding in increasing measure a lot of kids in our society are losing their ability to feel pleasure, like the physiological ability to feel pleasure, because they're being overstimulated with too much pleasure. They're getting everything they want, and they're actually losing. There's a doctor named Archibald Hart. He's been studying it for years, and anhedonia is this big thing that's sweeping the nation where people are actually losing their ability to feel pleasure because they're getting their senses are overrun all the time. A little side note there for you. You can Google it. Anhedonia. So he says, what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine. Hey, anybody relate to that? You say, man, I just want to shut it all off. I just want to check out. So wine, drugs, video games, whatever it is. I just want to shut it all off. I want to check out. And so wine, King Solomon, man, he feels you. 3,000 years ago, he tried it. We're still doing the same thing. We want to numb the feeling, right? You have a hard day at work. You're like, I just want to wash it all away and numb it, right? So he says, I tried to cheer myself with wine, and I embraced folly. I started goofing around. But even in the middle of all that, I was still being wise. It's interesting, right? He's like, I still kept I didn't lose it, right? I kept control, but I was just drinking in moderation, or I was goofing around in moderation, right? He says, I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. So finally he says, you know what? Maybe building stuff is the way to go. Maybe the way to create a legacy on earth is for me to build stuff that has my name on it, right? So he said, I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks. I planted all kinds of fruit and trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. So he said, not only did I build stuff, I made it sustainable, right? I made something that's going to outlast me, right? You read all these books that say, build something that outlasts you. He's like, I'm going to build a legacy. Maybe that will bring me a sense of meaning. If I have stuff with my name on it that I built. King Solomon built that. King Solomon built that, right? He tried to do that. And he said, I bought male and female slaves. Don't recommend doing that one. It's illegal. And he had other slaves who were born in my house. And I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. He's just acquiring stuff. He's got unlimited resources, so he just gets more and more. But he keeps feeling more and more empty. So here's what he goes. He goes, I amassed silver and gold for myself. He's like, maybe the secret's in the bling, right? Maybe if I just get enough rings, enough gold and chains on me, maybe that's... He says, and I got the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers. There weren't iPods back in the day, so he got his own choir. Like, just play on demand. Sing, choir, sing, right? He got a harem as well. I got a bunch of wives. Some of you thinking, man, that's what I need is more wives, right? The delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. And all this, I was still being wise. My wisdom stayed with me. So it goes on. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. If I saw it and I wanted it, I got it. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor. And now I love this line. And this was the reward for all my toil. How many of us have said, man, I've worked hard. I deserve this. Right? I deserve this. And listen to me. There is nothing wrong with working hard and getting nice things. But here's where the challenge comes in. When you think those nice things are going to fill that deeper lack of meaning within you, that void, that hole, it's never going to work. There's nothing wrong with having nice things. But when those nice things are what you're using to keep yourself buoyed up, keep yourself feeling like you have value, keeping yourself feeling like you have some sort of a purpose, you're going to find yourself feeling even more and more empty, just surrounded by stuff. When I surveyed all my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. He said, man, I did it all. I got it all. I built it all. I had it all. It was meaningless. It was chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. There's that line again. Nothing was gained because it didn't have any eternal purpose in what he was doing. So here's what his conclusion is. I hated life. We've all been there, right? You've had times where I hate this life. Like, what is this that I'm living? Because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless. It's a chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. Billy Graham once said, you'll never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. All that stuff you've got, you can't take it with you. They will not bury you with it. You're going to have to leave it behind. You know who's going to have to clean it up? Your grandkids or your kids, right? A few years ago, a great aunt, I can't remember what she was, a great aunt of mine or something, she passed away, and she was a hoarder. She grew up in the Great Depression, so she lived with this constant fear of not having enough, and so she would just collect and collect. And we got into her house, and I was like horrified when I went there. I'm kind of a minimalist myself. But when I went in there, you could hardly walk. Like, there's just stuff everywhere. And I remember telling to my dad, I'm like, Dad, let's just burn the place down. Like, this is going to take months of our life to clean up because she had collected so much stuff. And you know what? She couldn't take it with her. And you know what? It never actually brought her fulfillment either. Even at the end of her life, it didn't bring the fulfillment she was looking for, because stuff will never bring you fulfillment. That lie in your head says, if you just get one more thing, you'll have it. If you can just, once you get through this season of life, once the kids are out of the house, you'll have it made. Once you've got that bigger house, you'll have it made. Once you retire, you'll have it made. But you know what? It never brings the fulfillment. In fact, I work with guys all day long that are stepping out of retirement. And they're terrified because they're like, I've been living for my job. And now I don't know what I'm living for because I was trying to find my purpose in my job. We're actually talking about that in 2 months from now. A little bit about that. But the key is you cannot find your purpose in what you do. And you've got to recognize this. Whatever that thing is that's driving you, whatever it is, fill in the blank with it. It may be getting married. It may be getting more money. It may be, you may be on some dollar amount. It may be the motorcycle. It may be a new relationship. It may be get out of town. Listen, whatever it is, you can fill in the blank, whatever your personal it is, it will never be enough. Because the lie will keep going in your head that says, you just need one more thing. Now, get serious here for a second. I know that many of us in this room, we grew up with some lack, right? We didn't have a lot of the stuff that we would have liked to have. I remember as a kid, my dad was a pastor, a church planner, and we didn't have any money. And I remember the big deal back then was Nike Airs. Like, there's Nikes and there's Nike Airs. And everybody wanted Nike Airs. And I remember in middle school, I wanted Nike Airs, but they were like $100 more than Nikes. And I remember my mom was like, no, I'm not going to buy you Nike Airs. And I remember at school, kids making fun of me. Like, oh, you don't have Nike Airs. Dude, those shoes suck, right? And I remember feeling like I'm not enough because I don't have Nike Airs. And the funny thing is I ran into one of those guys the other day that made fun of me for that. And he's like an unemployed communist now. But that's a side thing. But like, I was just like, you were the one that made fun of me because I didn't have Nike Airs, right? And now he's like, Nike is the devil, right? Anyway. Here's what I know, right? we all in this room, many of us, we want to give our kids the stuff we never had, right? You want the best for your kids, and there's stuff that I didn't get Nike Airs growing up, so I want my kids to have Nike Airs. But here's the thing, guys. It's a lie. And I know the desire in our hearts is to give our kids the best we can give them, but it is really dangerous when we start teaching our kids that the stuff is what's going to bring fulfillment. Because here's the thing. More is caught than taught. You don't sit around teaching your kid what you value, but they catch what you value by watching what you value. And until we get this figured out inside of us, recognizing this idea that it's a lie that one more thing is going to make us happy, we run the risk of passing that on to our kids. But you can be the one that says, you know what? I'm not falling for this lie anymore. You can break that in your family. You can be the one that changes the destiny of your family. You say, man, we've been living for stuff. We've been trying to get our identity and fulfillment and purpose from the junk we own. And you recognize it and you face it. And you say, no, we're not going to do this. And I'm telling you, it's so tempting because we want to give our kids the stuff that we never had. But don't fall into the lie. And it's this endless cycle. And we teach it to our kids by what we value. So you got to get your own crap together, okay? Like, we've got to figure this out on our own. We've got to get it together in our lives so we don't pass this on to our kids. Because we do not want our kids living a life of feeling meaningless, feeling lack of purpose, when we have learned it ourselves. But here's the thing. We show our kids by how we live what we value. And if you're always living for that next thing, man, if I can just get that job promotion. I meet people all the time. They're running all over the country chasing job promotions. It creates instability in their families. I was talking to a guy the other day. People tell me the weirdest thing things in the grocery store lines. I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know if I have counselor on my forehead or something, but this guy started talking to me. He's like, you work hard. I work 14-hour days trying to give my kids the stuff I never had, and then you get a phone call saying your kid wants to commit suicide. And he's like, what happened? I was like, what do you mean? And he starts telling me, he's like, man, I work all the time. I'm never home so my kids can have everything I want. And it's like in the middle of the sentence, he stopped and he goes, what did I do wrong? And then he got quiet, and he's almost like he'd answered his own question. Your kids don't need more junk. They need you. They need your presence. They need your time. I'm getting a little preachy. I'm sorry. Calm down, right? I feel for so many children that I see that I know their parents are trying to give them the best, but their priorities they're off because they haven't figured it out within themselves. They haven't figured out it's not the stuff that's going to get me more. It's not the other relationship. It's not another husband that's going to get me what I'm looking for. The thing I'm looking for is never going to come from another it. The thing that I'm looking for is never going to come under the sun. It's coming from outside of that. And that's where Jesus, he pops in and he says this. He says, guys, if you really want to invest in something that's going to have really good dividends, don't store up for yourself treasures on earth. Don't be investing in this stuff here. Because all that stuff can be taken away. Moths can eat it. Vermin can destroy it. You know what vermin is? Vermins are like rats and lice and stuff that destroy things. I heard somebody say one time, this makes me think of this statement. Even if you win the rat race, you're still a rat, right? So don't store up where vermin that can destroy, where thieves can break in and steal. You ever had that? You ever had your car broken into, or somebody broke into your house and that you feel so violated? Like somebody was in my house rifling through my stuff. It's so, And Jesus is saying, look, if you fix your eyes on the stuff that's really important, nobody can ever take that away from you. People can steal all your junk, man. They'll steal your TV, they'll steal your motorcycle, they'll steal your car. But if you focus on eternal treasures, that can't be taken from you. So he says, but store up yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and vermin don't destroy, and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. King Solomon, he follows it up at the end of chapter 2 by saying this. He says, a person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own work. This, too, I see is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? What he's saying is, guys, this lie that if you just get one more thing, you'll have enough, it is a lie. And if you're always chasing it, you will always feel empty. You will always feel inadequate. But here's the thing. If you enjoy the life God has given you, that is where you will find the fulfillment. Choose to be content with the life that God has given you.
Thank you for listening to Crossroads Church. We trust this message enriched your life in some way. For more information, visit us on the web at www.crossroadsc.com. Or if you're in the area, come by and visit us on a Sunday morning at 8:30, 10, or 11:30 a.m. Crossroads Church, we're bringing a real God to real people.